Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another cool little fun, affordable review for you from the brand Timex. A little bit about them. They were founded back in 1854, originally as the Waterbury Clock Company. Then they later transitioned to the U.S. Time Company, and that was right around World War II before they settled on the name Timex Corporation, which happened around the 70s. Now, this type of watch, I'd really consider it an everyday watch, so some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for an everyday watch. Of course, you're gonna want that versatile blend of sporty and dressy attributes. This is an actual really cool reissue slash collaboration with Todd Snyder, and this is the Timex Q Todd Snyder kind of braceleted edition. Unfortunately, when I went to go back to the site to go check on the specifics of the name and whatnot, the listing was actually gone. Probably because it was sold out and people were upset and people want more. So I'm glad I was able to snag this one to share with you guys. Hopefully they'll do some future runs because that's typically what Todd Snyder does. They'll come in and out of stock and will sell very, very well. So is this Timex Q the one for you, the one that'll finally make you pull the trigger? For me, it was. This is actually a modern reissue of a classic 70s style Timex Q that was very, very similar in look. Now, the price on this one was only $179. Plus, there are always, of course, additional site discounts that are regularly available anywhere from 10 to 15, 20, 30% off, depending on if you just signed up for their newsletter or they have a current promotion going on. So there are a lot of deals. So that is one nice thing, even though considering that these are really only available through one dealer. The case size is really nice at 38 millimeters in diameter. And this one is just really cool and very wearable. So with all that said, let's actually go ahead, get this piece in hand and take a closer look. Alrighty guys, so as you can see, 38 millimeters with a 12.4 millimeter height, and that is including the crystal. It's actually much thinner without that, but I do like to include the total thickness when I do mention that here. Now the lug to lug is only 44.6, which is great. Of course, this is stainless steel, and it does have this brushed and mixed polished finish, which is nice. And I have to say, for all of the Timex Qs, this is probably the one that looks the best. But I will say that is looks wise. I mean, build wise, this is still a under $200 Timex, and it has certain elements. Although this bracelet looks magnificent, if you take a closer look, guys, you can see it is quite hollow and made out of quite a few pieces of very thin stamped. Even the clasp actually looks very nice. It even has this nice little bevel there, but it's totally just a bunch of stamped stuff there, guys. This isn't some secret high value Easter egg of a watch. It's a fun, cheap watch that is borderline fashion watch, but with some actual significance, and from a brand that, of course, Timex has been around forever, and then also from a designer in Todd Snyder that has a great eye and can really pick great references and nice little attributes to add to his particular kind of collaboration editions. You also do get this nice boxed domed acrylic crystal, so nice and warm, very legible. Even the of course at the ends where that curvature is, you are going to get some distortion, but by no means does it really hurt the overall readability there. It's actually really nice. This piece honestly reminds me a lot of this piece that I got for my son not too long ago. I reviewed it on the channel. This is actually a special edition Euro spec steel little Casio digital watch, and it has a lot of the same attributes. It's it's still a cheap Casio, and it still has little cheap little things for the connectors and everything like that. So it really reminded me of that, and so I thought I'd pull it on the screen there, guys. It's kind of like a fully loaded Toyota Corolla, right? It's like the cheapest car, but you can get like the nicest version of it. But at the end of the day, it's still a Corolla. At the end of the day, still a little Casio, little digital watch. And at the end of the day, this is just still a little cheap quartz Timex watch. But this is the fully loaded one, guys. This thing has got the legs on it. It's got some sex appeal. I'm not gonna lie to you. I love the look here visually with that integrated style bracelet, although it's just an 18 millimeter lug width, so it does have some options from there, you know, if you really wanted to switch up the bracelet, but I think it looks fair enough. And you know, looks wise, it looks great. I should say it feels good enough. It's not terrible, and you know, obviously this, you're not spending a ton of money on this. You're spending really under 200 bucks. You know, maybe a decent amount under that, depending on what type of discount code you end up using on that day. If you use that little newsletter or whatever discount code that's available, you could really get this at a very affordable price. But I do love the way that the light plays off of this bracelet. Very retro, and design wise, this is probably the best looking one that I've seen. Now the bezel itself, of course, it is indexed for a dive bezel with a 60-minute counter, but it's actually just a friction fit. So as you can see there's no clicks, very smooth. So you can use it, but it's not one where it's like you bump into it and it's gonna go anywhere. So I will say that is pretty nice for them to really have that dialed in. And the nice thing is, of course, you're not taking it diving anyway, so it doesn't really matter if you accidentally lose a little bit of the time that you're counting. It's not like you're going to run out of air. So it's nice to, if you go a little over, you know, on what you're measuring, you know, it's not going to be the end of the world if somehow you click back a little bit. So at the end of the day, it does actually help, because you don't have to circle all the way around if you go slightly past. I mean, that can get frustrating when you're trying to get your dive bezel to line up with the 12 o'clock. You go one click too far, you got to start all over. Not here, not in this case. So there are some silver linings to the little bit more of a simple layout here. Of course, the crown isn't screw down. It's not even signed. But the case itself, I really do enjoy the look of this case. Look at the compartmentalization with you know, that kind of top hat bezel, and then you do have this nicely contoured mid case, and then, you know, just a little bump there on the back, and then with that really trick little old school battery hatch. So I think that's really cool. And then even you take on the other side, also quite still nice to look at. Has a bit of a flying saucer kind of side profile, which I guess makes sense. You know, something from this era, so a little far out, if you will. From that standpoint, you know, this is a good looking little piece. Again, you can see the solid case back there, and then there is they do have Lume along the outer minute track there, so there's those little pips, but the applied indices themselves at the 12, 6, and 9 really just have some fun contourings on there. They don't have Lume, but there is some Lume on the hour and minute hand, which is nice. You also see that great red crosshair motif, which I think is obviously attractive and quite useful, because you are breaking the dial down into quadrants, and it does make it, for quick reference wise, it is really nice to kind of be able to see that at a glance. Now, the seconds hand is actually painted, and you can see that nice little red tie-in, and that definitely just screams 70s to me. So really cool, little fun there. The water resistance on this is only 50 meters, so if it get caught in the rain, you'll be okay. If you get a little splash here and there, but you know, of course, you wouldn't want to try to submerge this for any amount of time, or you know, take it with you if you're really going to get hot and heavy with some water sports in general, because it's just not a super tough watch either, so you probably don't want to even play dry sports with this. The bracelet itself actually tapers from about 22 millimeters down to 15, so it does have a nice dramatic taper, which does help the watch actually be, you know, appear quite refined on wrist, which is really nice. And then of course the links are hollow again, and then you can see they kind of have this very interesting little system here where you just punch these out and then you fold them over and they come apart. So it wasn't too hard for me to figure out, but I'm definitely not going to do a whole dedicated video on it. It's pretty self-explanatory. But with all that said, let's actually get this piece on wrist and see how it wears for you guys. Alright guys, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears really well, and a lot of that has to do with those wide bracelet links. You can see, of course, they're reflecting off of the darkness in the dark room that I record in, but you can see as the light hits it, it's actually quite nice to look at, and the brushing definitely helps with the visual interest. So really quite handsome, lays pretty nicely on the wrist, and honestly doesn't feel too big or too small. I think when I look in the mirror, it can kind of get a touch of too small, because it is a relatively small dial, and honestly the case shape does accentuate making the itself wear smaller. And then you add a dive time bezel, which shrinks the dial down in proportions, and it can look a little bit small. I think probably on film right now it doesn't look small at all. Get up close, of course it looks small, but if standing in front of the mirror, it might look a little small. Honestly, this piece will probably end up going to my son as well, to be kind of his first analog read watch, or my younger son's first analog read watch anyway. So yeah, on the wrist, definitely tidy retro proportions. It's pretty thin, and of course very, very lightweight. So with all that said, let's actually go ahead and set up some low light and Lume transitions for you. All right guys, we'll go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, nothing to write home about when it comes to the Lume, but you know what, at least they have Lume. There are Lume plops there. They're quite legible. Nothing special, but I don't think, of course, this isn't a real dive watch. It just has some diver style characteristics, so I don't mind it too much. But one of the nice things I do like to do, of course, is really highlight the low light transition and how this piece is going to look when not in direct sunlight, because you won't always be in direct sunlight. Sometimes you're going to be coming in out of a vehicle, you're going to be doing that transitional lighting kind of in between places. And the nice thing is when you look at it in this light, you kind of get a better idea of the way some of those finishes are going to render in less than optimal lighting, because now they're not getting washed out. Also, you're going to be able to look at the dial and kind of see how much the red really pops, or how matte or how satiny the dial actually is. Also, you'll get an idea of some of the clarity on that crystal. So really cool. I like the way the light just dances off of those links, so you can see as it transitions. Look at that. That is a good look. And then those little high polished kind of in between crevices do a really, really nice job of just accentuating this timepiece. So really cool, especially considering the price. We all know it's a looker, but as far as desirability, I think it definitely has quite a bit. As far as model variations go, of course there are other items and units within the Q series, but this one is quite different than any of them in comparison, honestly. And I think it looks quite a bit better, head and shoulders better, in a lot of ways. So really, really nice, comparable models. Geez, guys, this is a very specific demographic, honestly, that's going to be going for expensive Timexes. So, I mean, I guess relatively expensive, for a quartz watch. I guess it's relatively expensive. But if you're going to have spend this much on a quartz watch, it might as well be a Timex. And if you're going to buy a Timex that costs as much, it might as well be one that looks this good. So I can't be too mad at that. Really, the bottom line here is this is a fun little piece for those who are able to pick them up while they come in and out of stock. Good on you. Definitely try to grab one before they're sold out. And depending on when you watch this, you might want to recheck, because they might not be sold out anymore. So with all that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do it like. And if you're new, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.